is to present Juan Gutiérrez, Superman. I love him. He's amazing. He's a real advisor. I met him just knowing Cannabis. I don't know if you know Cannabis, but I encourage you to check it out. At the end, he's an agricultural engineer, and he knows the plan. He was working in Canada for a long time in the company Med Relief, doing 35 tons a year and knowing how to produce a proper cannabis. At the end, he has been moving, and we've been traveling all around the world, just trying to show people how to grow properly and doing the things as according to what we know. And basically, he's gonna show us why most of the facilities mistaken and having errors, and how all this experience has been moving through his company, Sostanza, which they have an amazing team. And yeah, thank you very much, Juan, to be here. Let's listen to him and let's enjoy. We're going to have one, and then we're going to have a small break later on, just for you to know. I will just ask you, once we finish, to come back at time, because we have the 2 round tables before we go to lunch. So thank you, Juan. Bravo.
Thank you. Perfecto. Perfect. I should have done this in Spanish, but I think English is a bit easier for me at this point. I spent about 20 years in Canada. That's where I started growing, went to school there, managed some big facilities, as Ruben was saying, and I've been consulting for the past 5 years. Consulting in what? Mostly cultivation. A lot of our work is now facility design, so that's what I want to talk about now. Yeah, so what do we do is basically facility design all over the world. Started in Canada, then the US, a lot in Thailand, South America, South Africa, Australia. Basically anywhere where cannabis is legal and allowed and licensed, let's say. We work with large-scale cultivators, and we always try to bring, let's say, the agricultural, horticultural, greenhouse production knowledge into, let's say, cannabis production, professionalizing growers and just giving the opportunity to people that want to get into the business to do it properly, let's say. And we help, large facilities, as you can see that one there, but also, very small craft cultivators. Our smallest client is growing in a small room. Anyone can access cannabis, right? Not just the people with money. Yeah. So these are some of the companies that we've helped over the years. As I said, all over the world, mostly in the U.S., especially the East Coast, Europe, and Asia as well. So yeah, when we design a facility, what do we do? What do we look for? This is our process, basically. We first define, assess, and we design the actual facility. We equip it, we build it, and then we launch it and we scale it. Very important steps in terms of the facility design, but a lot of people mess it up. Mess it up at the beginning, mess it up at the end, somewhere in the middle. But we try to focus at the beginning. If you do things right from the very beginning, then we try to start, put our best foot forward. But why do facilities fail? And not all facilities fail. It's some facilities fail, and maybe they haven't failed yet, but they will fail at some point. So why do they fail? What are the main reasons that we see facilities or companies fail? One of the main things is bad planning, as I was saying. We start from the beginning, plan it out properly, design from the beginning, let's say, making decisions that will make it a scalable business, a scalable operation, having the right idea from the beginning, and avoiding mistakes, right? Anything that is done wrong first, it's going to be very hard to fix after the fact. So planning is super key, super important, and as I was saying, the strategy is where things really start. One of the things that we look at mostly is when a client comes to us, okay, they want to design a facility, the first thing that we ask them is, what do you want to produce? What kind of flower do you want to produce? What kind of product do you want to produce? Is it extract? Is it high quality craft kind of cultivation, for example? But also, how much capital do you have available? A lot of people have big dreams and they say, oh yeah, I want to build a huge facility. How much do you have available? Well, only a little bit. That's where the problem starts. And if it doesn't start there, is when they try to build something that is too big for their own strategy, and then they start cheaping out on buying lower quality equipment, or not enough dehumidification, HVAC, for example. And that's part of the strategy. Knowing what you can do, knowing what you can grow into, and kind of go from there. I just talked about HVAC a little bit. I think that's one of the main issues that we see in facilities failing is not enough dehumidification, not enough cooling, not enough heating sometimes. Poor airflow. It's like almost every single facility that we go to, they struggle with airflow in cannabis facilities, right? It's one of those things that it's like, well, we'll have a couple of fans here and there, they oscillate, whatever, but nobody's actually controlling it and actually giving the plants what they want and mitigating risk, right? So that's one of the biggest factors there, and also no redundancy. If one of the units go down, what happens? Can you operate without that one unit or whatever? This is one facility that we went to recently, and they didn't have enough dehumidification. So what did they have to do is put a dehumidifier in the aisle and just jerry-rig it and hope for the best. But that's not scalable. You can't operate like that long term, right? So it all starts with putting the right equipment from the beginning, investing what you need to, and if it's a small facility, fine. If it's a big facility, you better have some money to be able to do it properly. Let's talk about greenhouses. I just spent about a month in Colombia visiting family mostly, but also looking at some projects, looking at clients, visiting clients, and the main mistake there was just not understanding the climate. Cannabis is a plant that likes sun, heat, but also likes to be dry. And a lot of these greenhouses, they were built and designed in a way that humidity is almost impossible to control unless they put in a lot of money and a lot of infrastructure. And that's one of the things that we saw there that people were not doing properly. Some people are, and it's getting better. And the more knowledge that's out there, the better it is. And people are learning, getting better every day. But when you've spent so much money into a project, an operation, things like that, and maybe you've been wrongly advised on certain things, then things like this tend to happen. We're also seeing some issues with, for example, in the Netherlands, we have some very nice glass houses, right? Everything's very well controlled. It works there. But then they try to bring that and put it in places like Portugal, for example, or places like Colombia. It just doesn't work, It's like you have to have the right system for the right place also, right? So that's part of the, let's say, the strategy also, knowing what you have to do and kind of go from there. Another thing is the lack of biosecurity measures. For example, a lot of the people that we work with, they work in the export market, right? They want to be able to export from Colombia, from South Africa, from Thailand, for example, and into the European markets. And there is very, very critical that there's no contamination, low bioburden, low bioactivity on the flower, for example, no creepy crawlies on the flower, for example, right? So in Colombia, I saw a lot of greenhouses where there's a lot of open sides, a lot of venting, which is good for growing the plant. But at the same time, you have to think about where is that flower going? What do you want to do with that flower, and where is your market, right? And that's part of the decision there. Another thing that we see when looking at facilities, auditing facilities, and designing facilities is the workflow, right? How do you go from the beginning to the end of the process, right? Starting with cloning, going all the way to shipping the flower, right? A lot of the times there's mixed flows. You're kind of going from cultivation to post-harvest, back to cultivation, going through, different kind of rooms to be able to get to where you need to, and that's it's usually a problem there. If you design a facility from the beginning, you want to try to make it so that it goes from A to Z in a good way, so that you're able to actually operate it efficiently and reduce your risk and reduce your cost, right? So having long travel distances, having to walk a lot from, let's say, where the mothers are, where the clones are, to where the flower rooms are, can be a problem, but it's not as big of a problem, but it's something that you have to deal with for the rest of the life cycle of that facility. That also can lead to cross-contamination, as I was saying. If you have to go from cultivation into post-harvest back, that's a way for things to kind of cross over and have some issues there. But also when it comes to the international regulatory frameworks like GACP, GMP, for example, where you have to have clear delineation of where things are, how things move. You need to have kind of a good location, a good sense of where things need to be. Another thing is the wrong use of space, right? So for the most part is people forget about certain areas that are super critical for the operation. For example, they put a lot of emphasis when it comes to the flowering space. And yes, flowering, it's what, let's say, it's what makes the money, right? 25 to 40% of the overall area of the facility is canopy area, flowering canopy area. So people try to maximize that. But at the same time, they forget about places like, locker rooms or storage areas or sanitation rooms, for example. Veg rooms that are, just a single layer, small plants, for example. And this is, part of the work that Anexo is doing. How do we avoid stuff like this, it starts with design, but also with a process, right? Sanitation flow, storage, staff areas. A lot of the times we go to facilities, it's like, okay, where are people gonna eat? Where are people gonna change, they can just go to the warehouse, sit on some boxes and eat theirs. That's not nice. It can work at the beginning, it can work for some time, but after a while, it needs to be a little bit more clearly laid out. This is a big one. This is a big one, but we see less and less of it. The master grower kind of mentality of we have one person that knows the process, knows the plants. We design based on what this one person says. Oftentimes what happens is that this person may not know exactly what needs to be done and how. Maybe they've run a small facility, but then they have to scale it up, and then this is where problems will happen. Or, if, for example, they're used to grow in a certain way, you get locked into one methodology, one way of doing things. And, as everything in cannabis and many other industries, and, there's turnover, people change, growers change. But then it's hard to then go back to that facility and say, okay, well, now we're doing things differently, for example, or if there's new research, for example, right? And you need to pivot, you need to change methodologies. How do you do that if you've locked yourself into one way of operating? So usually, we build with flexibility, with making the grower a part of the process, but not ultimately just focusing on what they want. It's a lot of it is what they want, but also thinking ahead of what could be, what could we learn about the plant and how can it change in 5 years, for example. We need to be flexible and we need to be able to get better and improve. So in terms of the design flow, usually people start from the beginning, or not from the beginning, from the end. And they look at a site, or they look at a greenhouse, or they look at a warehouse, and they start from the end. What does it look like? Where am I going to put my rooms? Where am I going to put my dry rooms, for example? But as I was saying, we like to start from asking the questions of what is the market? What are you trying to solve? What are you trying to produce to? How much are you trying to produce, right? Like, what's your capacity? What's your throughput, for example? What kind of quality you're looking for? Things like that. And then also the workflow, As I was saying, how do the clones flow all the way to dry plants and shipped flower? And then after that, doing the calculations and making sure that all the HVAC is properly sized. We have redundancy. We have ways of in the event of things going wrong, how do we manage that? And then we start building. So going back to this is having a way of a clear path, right, to scaling, to launching, to be able to train not the grower, but anyone on the cultivation team and the operations team to be able to say, okay, well, I understand this facility, makes sense. I can look at it and understand the process and just grow with it, and do things correctly. So just a bit more on this: defining the batch size, designing the layout, HVAC based on plant evapotranspiration, and then equipment selection. And what does good actually look like, right? Having a clean layout, clear movement, proper zoning, balanced space allocation, and just maybe I can see if this video works. Oops, maybe not. Let's see. Never mind. Yeah, just wanted to show you a video there of this facility, the facility in Thailand that we recently did. Probably one of the largest producers out there. Just using Canadian knowledge and Canadian, let's say, expertise, bringing that to Thailand, and now they're probably one of the best cultivators out there, and producing flower that's on par with North American standards, and so yeah, they're doing things right from the beginning, and part of it is that we had a good team that wanted to learn and wanted to do things right, as well as we provided as much information as we could when it came to designing the facility. Yeah. So in conclusion, if the design is right, you have proper execution. If the design is wrong, it's going to be constant problem solving, or let's say spending a lot of money trying to change things around and having to scale up, descale, scale up, and then pivoting, and which is not fun at all. At the end of the day, the way that at least we like to look at it is that we're not building a grow. We're building a production system. We're building it as a machine that you can put any genetic in there and have good quality flower, great quality flower coming out of it at the end, and of course put in the love that the plant requires. Like at the end of the day, it's not just let's say soulless cannabis. At the end of the day, we're trying to give access to the people that need it, that want it, and this is our way of doing it. This is what we like to do, and design and teaching and sharing knowledge, and yeah, this is part of it. So yeah, thank you.